Here is the mistake almost every national newsroom in Nigeria is making about Rivers State right now. They are covering this as a two-man story. Wike versus Fubara. The godfather versus his protege. Who insulted who? Who withdrew from which primary? Who said what at which press conference? It makes for great television. It is also incomplete in a way that will leave you genuinely confused about what actually happens in Rivers State after May 2027. Because while everyone has been watching Wike and Fubara trade statements, a third bloc inside the same APC structure, built around Tonye coal and loyalties of former Transportation Minister Rotimi Amaechi, has been quietly positioning itself for relevance. While everyone has been counting impeachment votes, the real contest has shifted to something far less glamorous and far more decisive. Who controls local government structures, ward networks, and grassroots mobilization machinery in 23 local government areas? And while everyone treats this as a personality clash, the deepest fault line running underneath it is ethnic. A question of zoning and rotation between the Ikwerre-dominated upland areas and the Ijaw-dominated riverine communities that has shaped every Rivers State election since the Fourth Republic began. The real power struggle in Rivers State was never just Wike versus Fubara. It is a three-block, multi-layered contest over who actually inherits political control of one of Nigeria's most strategically important states, and it has been unfolding in plain sight while the headlines focused on the feud. Before we go further, if you're new here, Naija Brief exists for one reason: to give Nigerians the political analysis that mainstream media won't. Whether you're in Abuja, Lagos, Kano, Port Harcourt, or London, this channel is for you. Hit subscribe and stay with me. This gets deeper. To understand why the conventional framing misses the real story, you need to understand what the Fubara-Wike conflict actually represents, structurally, not personally. Rivers political analysts have described the conflict with precision. Beyond party platforms or ideological leanings, the contest between Fubara and Wike is fundamentally about control of political structures, dominance of grassroots networks, and the question of who truly commands authority in Nigeria's oil-rich state. For Wike, a second term for Fubara would have signified the total erosion of his influence and the loss of control over Rivers State's political machinery. That is the correct diagnosis, but it is only half the picture, because it treats Rivers politics as though only two-men structures matter. They do not. Rivers State APC's power dynamics, as documented by political reporting in May 2026, revolve around three major blocks, not two. The camp of FCT Minister Nyesom Wike, the emerging structure aligned with Governor Fubara, and the older APC bloc linked to Tonye coal and loyalties of former Transportation Minister Rotimi Amaechi. That third bloc has existed throughout the entire Wike-Fubara conflict, sometimes invisible in national coverage, but never absent from the actual mechanics of Rivers State party politics. This matters because Rivers State elections have historically been decided not by which godfather shouts loudest in Abuja, but by who controls party machinery, local government structures, ward networks, and grassroots mobilization on the ground. Those are the critical factors that influence delegate strength, campaign coordination, and election day mobilization. The two-man personality feud generates headlines. A three-block structural contest over ward-level machinery determines who actually wins in May 2027. The national media has been covering the headlines. The real contest is happening in the wards. Let us examine each block precisely, because each represents a genuinely different vision for what comes after the current crisis resolves. The Wike bloc is built on patronage relationships accumulated over more than a decade of political dominance in Rivers State, first as a PDP governor, then as a APC-aligned federal minister with direct access to Abuja's resources. Wike's strength is demonstrated concretely at the local government level. The APC's national vice chairman for the South-South zone, Victor Giadom, declared Gokana local government a no-go area for Fubara, stating bluntly that anyone wanting to win anything in Gokana must pass through Wike first. The Gokana local government chairman publicly pledged unwavering support, describing it as payback time. This is not rhetoric. It is a demonstration of functioning local government capture, the actual unit of political organization that determines ward-level delegate selection and turnout machinery. The Fubara bloc is built on the authority of incumbency, control of the government house, the state's executive apparatus, and crucially, growing goodwill from the presidency itself, even as his standing within Wike-aligned APC structures remains contested. Fubara's defection from PDP to APC in late 2025 was widely interpreted as a strategic realignment aimed at rebuilding alliances and securing relevance within the national political equation, rather than a genuine ideological alignment. His bloc's central vulnerability, demonstrated by the systematic disqualification of his loyalists in the 2026 governorship primary screening process, is that incumbency without control of the party machinery that screens and certifies candidates is a fragile form of power. The Amaechi coal block is the one almost nobody outside Rivers State is discussing, and it deserves far more attention than it receives. This is the older, established APC structure, built originally around Rotimi Amaechi's 2 terms as governor from 2007 to 2015, sustained through his tenure as Federal Transportation Minister, and now carried forward by businessman and 2023 governorship candidate Tonye. Amaechi himself has now resurfaced nationally as the reported running mate on Atiku Abubakar's ADC presidential ticket, meaning his Rivers State network is simultaneously a local power bloc and a potential conduit into a completely different national political project than either Wike's pro-Tinubu coalition or Fubara's contested APC standing. Tonye was among the candidates who withdrew from the May 21, 2026 governorship primary alongside Fubara, leaving Chinda to emerge unopposed. That withdrawal was widely read as Cole declining to contest a primary he believed was predetermined in Wike's favor, not as Cole abandoning his political ambitions in Rivers State. A bloc that withdraws from a contest it cannot win while retaining its underlying structure and waiting for the right legal or political opening is exactly the kind of bloc that resurfaces decisively the moment the Wike-Chinda candidacy faces serious legal jeopardy, which, as recent Court of Appeal rulings have demonstrated, it now does. Now, if what I just told you surprises you, drop a comment below. I want to know your reaction before we get to the part that changes everything. Now, let us go to the level where Rivers State elections are genuinely decided, and it is not the level most national coverage operate at. Rivers State has 23 local government areas, split broadly between an upland zone dominated by Ikwerre-speaking communities and a riverine zone dominated by Ijaw, Ogoni, and other minority ethnic groups. Rivers State governorship politics, since the return of democracy in 1999, has operated on an unwritten but consistently observed principle of zonal rotation between these areas, a principle that determines which bloc's candidate has the strongest claim to legitimacy in any given electoral cycle. This is where the ethnic dimension of the current crisis becomes unavoidable. Fresh political signals from Wike have reignited debate specifically over inclusion, balance, and the future of power rotation in Rivers State, placing Fubara, an Ijaw man from the riverine zone, at the center of an increasingly complex 2027 equation that involves questions of whether the upland Ikwerre bloc, historically dominant in Rivers politics through Amaechi, Wike, and now potentially Chinda, is prepared to cede the governorship back to the riverine zone for a genuine second term, or whether the rotation principle is being selectively invoked to justify removing a sitting governor from a different ethnic zone than the state's dominant political bloc. This is not a minor cultural footnote. It is the substrate beneath every legal argument, every primary dispute, and every coalition-building exercise currently playing out in Rivers State. When Magnus Abe, a former senator, declared that the Ogoni people have already taken sides with Wike, and when local government chairmen publicly framed their endorsements as ethnic and personal loyalty rather than policy alignment, they were revealing the actual mechanics of how Rivers State elections get won. Not through manifestos, but through zone-by-zone, local government by local government mobilization built on identity, patronage, and historical grievance. The machinery that wins a Rivers State election is the machinery that can deliver turnout in all 23 local government areas across both zones while managing the rotation expectations of an electorate that has internalized a specific understanding of whose turn it is to govern. Right now, no single bloc, not Wike's, not Fubara's, not the Amaechi coal structure, demonstrably controls that complete machinery. That is the actual contest, and it has nothing to do with who gives the most dramatic press conference in Abuja. The deeper national lesson from Rivers State is about what happens to Nigerian state politics after a dominant godfather's personal control begins to fray. Because Rivers State is demonstrating this pattern in real time, and it is a pattern other states will eventually face. Wike's political career traces a lineage that itself illustrates the cyclical nature of Rivers State power. From Peter Odili to Celestino Meya to Rotimi Amaechi to Wike himself, and now to the contested question of Fubara or a Wikean anointed successor. Each transition in that lineage involved exactly the kind of multi-block structural contest that is currently playing out. Not a simple, clean handover, but a period of genuine uncertainty during which local government control, ethnic coalition building, and legal maneuvering determined the outcome more than any single individual's personal popularity. What makes the current moment distinctive is the scale of legal contestation layered on top of the structural contest. The Court of Appeal ruling nullifying the Okocha-led APC leadership, the ALDRAP suit challenging Chinda's defection timing, and the unresolved question of whether INEC will even recognize a coherent APC candidate list by July. All of this means that for the first time in recent Rivers State history, the courts may end up determining the outcome of the bloc contest before the electorate gets the chance. For the rest of Nigeria, Rivers State is a preview of what 2027 looks like in any state where a single godfather's personal authority is fraying, simultaneously with legal challenges to the party structures that authority was built on. Watch for similar multi-block dynamics beyond simple incumbent versus challenger narratives to emerge in states like Kano, where Kwankwaso's influence is contested, and in states experiencing post-defection leadership disputes generally. For ordinary Rivers State voters, the most important takeaway is this. The outcome of 2027 will not be decided by whichever bloc wins the loudest argument in Abuja. It will be decided by which bloc has actually built durable, functioning structures at the local government and ward level by election day. Structures resilient enough to survive whatever the court decide about leadership disputes, defection timing, and primary validity between now and then. 3 things to watch as the real power struggle continues to unfold beneath the Fubara-Wike headlines. First, whether the Amaechi coal bloc re-emerges as an active force if Chinda's candidacy is further weakened by ongoing litigation. Tonye coal withdrew from a primary, not from Rivers State politics. If the courts continue to destabilize the Wike-Chinda candidacy, watch for coal or an Amaechi-aligned figure to re-enter the contest either within APC or through a different platform entirely, especially given Amaechi's own emerging national profile, as articles reported ADC running mate. Second, the local government chairman alignments across all 23 LGAs. The Gokana endorsement of Wike is one data point. Watch for similar public declarations or notable absences of such declarations from local government chairmen in Ikwerre-dominated areas, in Ogoni communities, and critically in Fubara's home base in the riverine zone. The pattern of which chairmen commit publicly and when will tell you more about the real balance of power than any Abuja press conference. Third, whether the rotation and zoning debate becomes formalized into an explicit campaign issue. If Fubara or a Fubara-aligned NDC candidacy explicitly frames the 2027 contest around the principle that the riverine zone deserves a genuine, uninterrupted second term, that framing could mobilize minority ethnic constituencies across the state in a way that transcends the Wike-Fubara personal narrative entirely, turning a godfather dispute into a zoning and representation election. The headlines will keep covering Wike and Fubara because that is the version of the story with the clearest protagonists and the most quotable insults. But the actual outcome of Rivers State's 2027 governorship contest will be determined by which bloc, Wike's patronage network, Fubara's incumbency, or the long-dormant Amaechi coal structure has built the deepest, most resilient grassroots machinery across 23 local government areas and 2 ethnically distinct zones by the time voters go to the polls. That is the real power struggle. It has already begun, and almost nobody outside Rivers State is watching it. If this analysis gave you clarity, share it with one person who needs to understand what is really happening in Nigeria. Like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.